Last week, I was looking through the classical releases, and I wrote down the first Christmas album released this year.
Oh.
That I very well might do. So it's already, the holiday season's on the way. What is it, October?
Yeah, October.
Wow.
I think I have 2 on my list so far.
Oh, wow. I've got 5, but they're all, well, most of them are Baroque. All right?
Okay.
But we can have a Baroque Christmas this year. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I just can't. Normally I can't start listening to that until December. Can't even start thinking about it now.
Yeah, it's true. But when it's Baroque music, it's religious music, so it just kind of sounds like, some, other kind of Baroque religious music for another day of the church year. Right. The way it comes across. But pretty festive sounding. It's a happy holiday.
In jazz, we've got a concept album for Christmas coming up, so
that could be exciting. Oh, got 2 months to wait for that, though.
Yeah. I'm sure they'll start coming out soon.
I was in a coffee shop the other day, too, and I saw a Halloween tree.
What?
It was a Christmas tree with black and orange decorations and a witch's hat on the top. And I could see all they're going to do when Halloween is over. They're going to take the witch's hat off and change the colors, and then it'll just be Christmas. They don't have to do any work to decorate for the Christmas season.
Budget marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Halloween never used to be a thing when we first came to Japan, but now you walk around and suddenly summer's over and there's Halloween stuff everywhere, so.
There really isn't much in the way of Halloween music, though, I think rock bands should get on that.
Yeah.
There are a few songs, but not many.
I think there's a couple Halloween jazz-themed albums that have been out for the past few years in multiple volumes. A couple singers have put them out. But
I had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll see if another volume comes out. Maybe we'll get it in by the end of the month.
Well, we're not doing a Halloween episode.
No.
No way.
Anyway, this week is episode 230 of Adult Music, the podcast with music for the mature mind. I'm your co-host, Russ.
And I'm your co-host, Mike.
Bringing you 6 albums every week, 3 from the classical world, 3 from jazz. Before we roll into new music for this episode, first I want to send out some thanks to Danish trumpeter Rolf Tofte for sharing our episode from last week on his Facebook page. We featured his recording Martha's Dance, which had a lot of great trumpet playing and fun original compositions. And in his post, now this is translated from Danish, so I don't know how well the translation works on Facebook, but he called us 2 lovely music nerds, Mike.
Well, he's not wrong. Why can't they say, things like, 2 handsome guys are coming to town and you should hide your daughters? That's what I'm hoping.
I guess just because we're not on video, so no one knows.
No, that's why I started the podcast. I mean, I thought it would help my love life, but no such luck.
Well, ladies, it's not too late to write in. A chance to meet Mike, the man behind the mic.
I wrote a novel, and when I was doing that, I was getting a lot of attention from other people. And you just write a novel. And I self-published it. It's not like I'm this big-time author. But then we do the podcast. I'm giving the card out. It looks really professional. Nobody cares. Podcasters aren't interesting to people.
We're asking too much of intellectual investment into the music, but...
Yeah, maybe.
It's like art. You have to go to it.
Or maybe we're just like everybody else. We have a podcast. Everybody's got a podcast.
I did read that only 1% of podcasts make it beyond episode number 200, so...
Oh, here we are.
Yeah.
We're in the 1%.
We're in the long-living, long-lasting podcast category anyway.
Right. Well, we've been doing it for a long enough time, so...
Well, speaking of doing things for a long time, but not doing them any longer, we've got a little bit of bad news in the classical music category, so let me get over to the piano here.
Okay, the Renaissance conductor, Denis Raison d'Adre, he was a French flutist and conductor specializing in Renaissance music, passed away on September 29th, 2025 in Tours, France, at the age of 69, which is fairly young. I just turned 60, so he's not much older than me. Born on July 25th, 1956 in Vaux-sur-Mer, he discovered his passion for music through childhood hymns and a teenage recorder club. Humble beginnings.
Oh, yeah.
And he honed his skills in Geneva and Paris while earning degrees in musicology and early music. So that's all this guy did was music, really. I kind of envy people like this. In 1989, Raison d'Adre founded the ensemble Dulce Mémoire, which under his direction became a beacon for authentic performances of Renaissance works, blending instrumental and vocal artistry with historical context. He released over 28 albums with Dulce Mémoire,
Wow.
including acclaimed works like Leonardo da Vinci, La Musique Secrète, which I highly, highly recommend, and most recently, Ronsard et la Musique, which we passed by because it's a 2-CD set.
Right.
Releasing these albums offered him the rank of Officer in the Order of Arts and Letters in 2019. And on this podcast, we covered Dulce Mémoire's album of Josquin's music called Tant vous aime on episode 78 back in 2022. So 2 years, actually
Right.
3 years ago now. It's
Yeah,
a long
3
time
years.
ago. Okay, they also released an album of very old Neapolitan songs that I love called Viva Napoli, which you should all check out. They're not Neapolitan songs that you know, and they're beautifully performed here. As a dedicated educator at the Tours Regional Conservatory and founder of La Droite Chemin de Musique Academy, Raison d'Adre inspired generations of musicians, leaving an indelible legacy in the revival and global appreciation of early music, and I certainly liked them, so rest in peace, Denis Raison d'Adre. We won't be doing any more Dulce Mémoire. I guess the ensemble will go on, but they probably need a new director now.
Okay, no bad news to report from the jazz side this week, so we'll just roll into new music. In the episode description, you'll find links to Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music for all of the recordings we're going to discuss. And at the top of the description, there's a link to the full episode playlist. That's all the music in one place on Deezer, CD quality streaming music from France. If you can't see the full description or the recording list and links are hard to access on your app, you can always come over and check us out on our host site. That's Podbean, podbean.com. Everything is easy to follow there. If you enjoy the podcast, please follow or subscribe wherever you enjoy listening to us, and tell a music-loving friend. Help us grow our audience. If you take a moment to give us a ranking or write a short review, that helps us get listed in the music category recommendations. We could use a few more reviews, so if you're having a good time listening, please just jot down your opinions and send them along. That helps us get some attention. Also, come follow us on our Facebook page. You can get more info during the week about new releases, see our interaction with the artists. You can leave a message or comment there as well. You can check us out on X. I post links to the new episodes over there too. Our ID there is Adult Music Pod. And if you'd like to contact us directly with any comments or questions, we'd love to hear from you. Our email address is adultmusicpodcast, all one word, @gmail.com. We're going to play music samples as part of our discussion, and this is our fair use disclaimer. Music sample clips are for commentary and educational purposes. We recommend that listeners listen to the complete recordings, all of which are available on streaming services in the links provided. And we also suggest that if you enjoy the music, you consider purchasing the CDs or high-quality downloads to support the artists. We're going to start out in classical with some Baroque music by a composer that the more we listen to, the harder he is to put your finger on just what his greatest sort of type of music was.
Yeah, and something I want to say about him is that 2025 is going to go down for me as the year where I really discovered that Telemann was a pretty great composer.
Yeah.
Now, he composed this huge amount of music, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. But I guess all the cataloging and has led to musicians finding like the really great works that are in there, because he did a lot of pedagogical works too,
Right.
and that's really what people knew. So they think, oh, this guy's just a teacher. He doesn't really have any music. But, Bach and him were friends, and they were musical colleagues too. And so Telemann held a high position in Hamburg. He was the Kapellmeister there before C.P. Bach took over that position. So he was held in high regard during his lifetime. Anyway, our latest excursion into Telemann's music are of his violin concertos. This is played by Isabelle Faust, one of the great violinists in the world today. And Akademie für Alte Musik Berlin, Bernhard Forck is the concertmaster. And this is on the Harmonia Mundi label, released September 26th. And it's a very long album, clocking in at just about 80 minutes. Woo, a lot of music on this. Couldn't get that onto two sides of a vinyl disc. You'd need a double album there. Anyway, Isabelle Faust, I should mention, plays the Stradivarius Sleeping Beauty of 1704 violin. So if you're a big fan of violin tone, that's what you're hearing on this album. Now, the booklet notes make the point that it's the fault of the mostly one-sided and distorted reception history of Telemann's music in the 20th century. The 20th century messed up a lot of things for classical music. That's what's responsible for the relative lack of popularity compared to other big-name Baroque-era composers. We think Bach, Vivaldi, Handel. We don't think Telemann, but we probably should.
Yeah.
After a phase of blanket disdain, there came a long period when it was almost exclusively his numerous compositions for amateurs and dilettantes that attracted attention. Generations of amateur musicians got to know Telemann as an accomplished, but at the same time somewhat innocuous, master of music for domestic consumption, known as Hausmusik, while his large-scale, serious works were largely neglected. Why would you do that?
Why?
You'd want to record the really great works, wouldn't you? I mean, anyway. It was not until later that virtuosos tackled the other, one might say, real Telemann. I mean, they're all the real Telemann, really. And musicologists, above all the meritorious staff of the Telemann Zentrum in Magdeburg, laid the foundations for a fair evaluation of this composer. Yes, in classical music, musicologists are very important people. They really allow musicians to discover all this music that they otherwise wouldn't come across. And a lot of times those musicologists are also musicians too, especially if they're Baroque or Renaissance era. They'll usually direct ensembles. Telemann was famous throughout Europe during his lifetime and held high-level positions, as I mentioned earlier. What recordings of Telemann's music in recent years are showing us, and I said especially this year, is that Telemann blended separate national and genre styles and combined different formal models to create an unmistakable personal idiom in which he was able to unite lightness and profundity as well as elegance and expressivity in a highly convincing manner. Okay, Bach did something similar, but Telemann's way of doing this is very different, and he's unique as well. Now, the first piece we're going to hear on this album is the Overture Suite in B minor for violin, strings, and continuo. It's the catalog number TWV 55:h4. Telemann has so many works that you have to have this really complicated, almost computer code, for his catalog. So that's how you can identify that work out of the thousands of work this guy wrote. Throughout the course of the suite, a melancholy mood is gradually brightened by means of ironic refractions. The first movement is the Overture, and it's a bit somber at the beginning. It has a bit of a French overture rhythm, the rhythm of the entrance of a king. It's a bit busy, though. The strings drive the melody, as is usually the case in Baroque music. Here there's some attractive, subtle brass in the texture. There's another great thing about the Baroque era. They used a lot of brass, and then suddenly it went away in the classical and Romantic eras. It made a comeback in the 20th century. Akademie für Alte Musik Berlin give the rhythm a bit of energy so that it isn't quite as somber as the harmony implies. In fact, the harmony seems to lighten as the overture goes on. At 1 minute and 47 seconds, the fugue starts, and it's lively with a bounce to its melodic shape, just the way I like it. The more matte-sounding period instruments and the lack of vibrato give the liveliness a lot of character. We hear Isabelle Faust play in the 3rd minute, but I'm going to sample earlier because I want to get this rhythm going here, so let's hear a little bit of this. Yeah, so there's a bit of an Italian feel to that. You heard Isabelle Faust at the end of that, and you got this great lively feel. Much of the remainder of the work moves in the same fashion as the sample, with repeated sections and understated playing by the solo violin. At 6 minutes and 5 seconds, there's a wonderful moment when the violin plays its solo figures via harmonics. It's only momentary, though, but listen for it. It's really magical. The movement ends with a dotted rhythm melting into a full cadence. Then we move to track 2, the Gavotte. There's a scurrying rhythm to this where the phrase ends in 3 emphatic chords, accented but understated here by the ensemble. The material is repetitive, but it's the overall sound of the Akademie that draws the listener in. The violin solos with figures, not showy, just before the 1-minute mark and past it. After the violin solos in the middle section, the opening material repeats. And I just want to mention, Faust is not a showy violinist at all on this entire recording. Even in the concertos, she's really serving the music all the way through. We'll hear more examples of that as we go on. Track 3 is the third movement, Lourd. Let's hear that. Okay, the violin comes in at around the 20-second mark, again playing with modesty. I like Faust's full but understated tone on the period violin. Track 4, Réjouissance, très vite. A chirpy movement led by rushing strings that can't contain the energy of the theme. That energy bursts out everywhere in this movement. The violin is in with figuration at around the 1-minute mark. The violin solo occupies the B section of the movement. The opening is back once the violin solo ends, and the movement has a good emphatic ending. Track 5, the fifth movement, La Bravoure. The dotted rhythm at the opening brings a galloping horse to mind. The violin plays figuration over the rhythm once the opening theme is completed. This has a bit of a tarantella feel to it in its 6/8 circling liveliness when the violin solos. There's some attractive sul ponticello playing by Faust in the closing 30 seconds, an unusual choice for a Baroque recording, but one that Faust kind of makes part of her playing style in Baroque music. She does it quite a bit on this album. Let's hear the ending of this movement. Track 6, the minuets, and also this is the 6th and 7th movements. Minuet 1 and Minuet 2 make up 2 movements. The first minuet flows smoothly with an elegant character. To my ear, this recalls Handel's water music a bit, just in its flow. The middle section features the violin in plucked continuo, probably Thor Harald Johnson on the lute, and this entire section is attractive, and I'd love to sample this, but I've got to be judicious with the samples on this 26-track album. The opening minuet then repeats. And then on track 7 we get Rodomontate. What's a Rodomontate, you might ask? Well, it's a he. He's a boastful, self-important character in Ludovico Ariosto's epic poem, Orlando Furioso, whose name has become a byword for grandiloquence. So he's basically a blowhard. And we know people who are blowhards, don't we, Russ?
For sure.
Yeah, not via the podcast, but via our daily lives. This really takes off from the opening with an aggressive attack in very high speed to the point where it surprises. Let's hear a bit of this.
There's some furious bowing there.
Yeah. It kind of reminds you a little bit of Vivaldi, doesn't it? From the Four Seasons, maybe the Summer Storms. Faust reintroduces sul ponticello playing as part of her Baroque sound palette in the first minute. She makes it work well, and the Baroque violin, without vibrato, manages to produce lightning in the listener's ears. An exciting ending to a very interesting overture. This is worth hearing in full, the entire overture. Tracks 8 through 10 is a sonata in D major for trumpet, strings, and continuo, TWV 44:1, and this features Ute Hartovich on the trumpet. It's a sonata, but combines concertante and dance-like elements. The first movement, track 8, is a sinfonia, marked spirituoso, so the opening is regal, with the trumpet sounding, to me anyway, like it's heralding the holiday season. It's actually good programming, getting away from the violin after the multi-movement overture. Hartwich plays with class. There are some passages where the violin is exposed, and that I guess that's Isabelle Faust, because it doesn't say it's Bernhard Forck. He's listed on the tracks he plays solos on, so I'm guessing this is Faust again. There's no true violin solo, though, in this movement, just brief solo departures from the texture. The movement unfolds in an ABA form. Track 9, the second movement, Largo, corresponds to the conventions of an Italian ensemble work. This slow movement starts with a solo violin over the others. The violin has most of the lines here, and there's no trace of a trumpet in this movement, making you wonder why the work places the trumpet with such prominence in the musical lineup. I guess it's just to indicate the instrumentation. And track 10, this is the one I'm going to sample, the third movement, Vivace. This has the character and rhythm of a jaunty bourrée. So this work combines national elements. The trumpet has the lead here, and this is the best movement to sample for that reason. The trumpet is at its most prominent here, but even so, it remains more of an ensemble player, never really fully stepping out, which I found really curious. There's some quick violin work here, too. Maybe it's Isabelle Faust there, and the violin actually gets the more interesting lines, which I can't figure out either. But anyway, we're back to the violin as the main solo instrument on tracks 11 through 13 Concerto, The Frogs, in A major for violin, strings, and continuo, TWV 51:A4. Telemann's contemporaries regarded him as a painter-composer. He had an unmatched ability to transform natural sounds, images, and situations into musical onomatopoeia, and this is probably something Bach admired him for, too. The Concert of Frogs is deployed most prominently in the first movement here. This is track 11, the first movement, Allegro, and the opening has a bubbly, flowing rhythm that's immediately appealing. The violins come in at about the 30-second mark and sound more like mosquitoes than frogs to me. It just kind of sounds like a place I don't want to be. Let's hear how they come in within the context. This must have really made the original audience sit up. All right, I think we've heard enough of that. The orchestra becomes raucous in their tutti playing once the violins are in. At 2 minutes, a new section starts with more of a dance-like character. It's teasing and stops and starts. Faust has some appealing squeaks in her tone at around the 3-minute mark and before, moving the bow to the bridge, as she likes to do for timbral change in Baroque music. It's an appealing effect in her hands, and on the Stradivarius violin as well. After this pleasant section, the whining discordant frogs are back at 4 minutes and 30 seconds. It's funny, but also annoying, really. So much of the music in this movement is so pleasant and uplifting. Track 12, the second movement, Adagio. A constant tremolo in the solo violin plays over consistently repeating eighth note chords. There's a bit of Vivaldi's Winter Concerto in this. It's pleasant throughout. And then track 13, the third and final movement, Menuet, Alternativement. The Menuet has a jaunty mid-tempo rhythm to it, straight out of the ballroom. There's interesting orchestration when the solo violin comes in at about the 1 minute mark, including a low bassoon peeking out of the texture for some bass notes. The textures vary creatively throughout, due not only to Telemann's writing, but also to the creativity of the ensemble. Sample this on your own in full. Tracks 14 to 18, Suite Gulliver's Travels in D major for 2 violins, TWV 40:108. Violin number 2 is the concertmaster Bernhard Forck. Okay, so Gulliver's Travels, we all know this story, right? We know actually the first 2 parts, and most of us know only the first one. The Lilliputians, which are the small people, and then the Brobdingnagians, who are the very tall, gigantic people. And then there are horses that talk and humans that are they're slaves. And then there are people who are just thinking all the time called the Laputans. They never filmed that in movies, I guess. That's why people don't really read the book, but it's all in there. Anyway, track 14 is the Entrada, first movement, Spirituoso. The theme has an I'm announcing someone's entrance quality to it. It's a brief movement, and all we're hearing here are 2 violins with no other accompaniment. The movement is fanfarish. Track 15, second movement, Lilliput, or Lilliput. This is a chaconne, and interestingly, the Lilliputian smallness is characterized by small note values, and the time signature 332. What a pain this score must be to read. The rhythm and violins scurry. Even the movement is short at about 25 seconds. Track 16, Brobdingnagische Jig. Here the time signature is 24-1, indicating the giganticness of the Brobdingnagians. This has more of a stretched melody to it, and the melody is folk-like. Let's hear a little bit of that. Yeah, really pleasant, really charming, and you get 2 violins playing together there. Track 17, Reverie der Laputier nebst ihren Aufweckern. Andante. Aufweckern is awakeners, and the inhabitants of Laputa were so absorbed in their intellectual games that they tilt their heads to one side and look inwards with one eye and upwards with the other. Since they are unaware of the outside world, they have servants who slap their ears and mouths to prevent their minds from wandering too far. This has a calm, then explosive quality, moving back and forth between the two, perhaps indicating the absorption and sudden excitement of the Laputians in their intellectualism. It's a pretty evocative movement. Maybe the excitement is the servants slapping them around to bring them back to earth. And track 18 is the fifth and final movement, Lure, de Gesittelten Huihums, and the Furie der Unartigen Yahoos. So the Huihums are the horses, because, that's the sound that they make, so they're called that. And the Yahoos are, I guess, the people. The interweaving, rushing lines of this brief 1 minute movement are compelling. Let's hear it. It's a pretty brief movement. We've heard most of it there. It's AB form too, and it's over before you know it. Track 19, Fantasia, number 3, in B minor, TWV 40:4. This is an extract from 12 Fantasias for flute without bass, TWV 40:2-13. This is marked Largo Vivace, and then there's a second movement marked Allegro. They're both on the same track here. Telemann self-published his 12 Fantasies à traversière sans basse in 1733. The solo writing displays Telemann's mastery of rapidly changing register to create the impression of an intrinsic 2- or 3-part texture. It's also up to the soloist to put this across, and of course with Isabelle Faust, we're in good hands here. Faust is playing solo here. The piece starts with quiet, upward-moving 3-note phrases. The lines develop a rhythm and become more complex as the note values tighten. There's a brief departure from the opening, then the rushing material returns. So let's hear a bit of her playing here. And there's more, but we'll stop there. A clear 6/8 dance rhythm, possibly a gigue, arrives at around the 2-minute and 40-second mark, and this dancing rhythm leads the work to its end. Track 20, Circle Canon, Canone Infinito, in E minor for 2 violins, TWV Anhang 40:103. This work is now attributed to Johann Joachim Quantz. This is his Sonata Opus 2, number 6 in E minor. Fourth movement, Allegro QV 3:2-3, originally published with Telemann's 18 Canon Melodieux, TWV 40-118-123. You can see why Telemann's music wasn't very popular with all these numbers. Piuttosto vivace. So Bernhard Forck plays violin number 2 on this, and the sound of the 2 violins together here playing the canonic theme is intriguing. So this is not by Telemann, it's by Johann Joachim Quantz. Let's hear it. The interweaving of the lines continues throughout the work, rhythms changing for new sections in both instruments together. There's some contrast in the work, as the melodies sometimes dance in both instruments and sometimes glide. It's got a quick 3/4 feel to it. Tracks 21 to 23, Concerto in A minor for violin, strings, and continuo, TWV 51:lowercase a 1. So the lowercase a indicates that it's in A minor, and the uppercase a would be A major. That's how the musicologists arranged Telemann's works. The 4-movement scheme recalls a sonata da chiesa with their slow introductions before the allegro outburst. The 2 tempo markings of the second movement suggest 2 movements, though. So the first movement, Adagio, on track 21, starts quietly with a Vivaldi slow movement-like pulsing of chords. There's a great false cadence at the 1-minute 23-second mark. The violin solo part is lyrical in a Vivaldian way. There's a full cadence at the end. Track 22, the second movement, Allegro moving to Adagio. The Allegro cheekily plays with the conventions of the ritornello and episode. The Allegro takes off with full, even slightly aggressive energy. The movement sounds like it's on the way to somewhere important. The movement suddenly slows toward the end, like it's missed its turnoff on the highway. and become lyrical like the first movement, ending again on a full cadence in the same manner. Track 23 is the third movement, Presto. To my ear, the violin line recalls the storm music from Vivaldi's Four Seasons. The double stopping and overall aggression and tone are exciting. Tracks 24 to 26, Concerto in D major for violin, trumpet, cello, strings, and basso continuo, TWV 53, D5. This features Ute Hartwich on trumpet, Katharina Litschig on cello. Telemann is close to the Italian concerto style here, particularly the style of Vivaldi. So on track 24, we hear the first movement, Vivace. The opening is regal, complete with a trumpet herald. The trumpet plays a bigger role here than in the work he was featured in. Let's hear this. The movement stays lively, but rather slows for the more thinly orchestrated middle. The more full-sounding opening returns at the end. Track 25, the second movement, Adagio. There's a great contrast here with the first movement, as sustained gauzy strings accompany an amorphous violin line. Staccato lines lead the harmony to a pretty interesting dissonance, followed by a cadence. At 55 seconds, the violin takes a lyrical melody accompanied most noticeably by lute and also staccato string chords. The lute's plucked attack peeks through the texture appealingly. And finally, track 26, the third movement, Allegro. The upbeat, aggressive rhythm and jaunty repeated note style of the accompaniment again recall Vivaldi. The trumpet rests for the second movement, but is back here, adding punch to the overall sound. The movement comes to a full cadence at 2 minutes and 17 seconds, and a brief solo violin statement follows, after which the ebullient rhythm of the opening is suddenly back. Faust, once again, on a diminuendo, slowly moves her bow down toward the bridge, getting that sul ponticello sound that's become part of her Baroque expressive arsenal. It's the last time we hear it on the album, as the ensemble then brings the movement to a rousing conclusion. I've got to say that recent Telemann releases are drawing me more to this composer, and this recording is no different. Isabelle Faust has now released a string of Baroque recordings to which she brings a unique personality, often playing with restraint and even modest tone, and employing effects such as sul ponticello bowing for expressive purposes. It all sounds part of her musical signature and serves the music well. Akademie für Alte Musik Berlin bring a strong rhythmic profile and overall high spirits to their performances, making this an uplifting listen. The warmth and good spirits provided by the works included here and the performances make the album very inviting. Nothing is overstated, the listener is invited to go to the music, and he wants to go. It's really an ideal situation for listening to this music.
The more we hear Telemann's music, the more I realize that it's really hard to get an overall concept for his compositions. He was great at composing in so many different Baroque styles and different forms. And in this program, we realize he has a really great sense of humor as well.
Yeah.
On this recording, Isabelle Faust and Akademie für Alte Musik Berlin play brilliantly and with lots of enthusiasm. The string playing here sounds wonderful on the recording. There's a lot of variety here. Now, one piece by Telemann that I am familiar with is his trumpet sonata in D major, because I have a couple recordings of it featuring all Baroque trumpet solo works. And I thought here it was rather puzzling that the trumpet was so recessed compared to the strings. in comparison to other recordings that I have. So it just sounded a little bit unusual in presentation. I'm used to hearing that trumpet more up front, but really the strings are in the spotlight on this recording. So I experienced it in a different way. In any case, overall, this is thoroughly enjoyable Baroque music, and it gives us more insight into all the different variety of composition styles that Telemann was excellent at.
All right, our next recording is one of my favorite works, Brahms' Piano Concerto No. 2, and 3 Intermezzi as well, solo piano works. And this is by Francesco Piemontesi, who we heard on a previous episode a few years ago with his album Nostalgia, which were sort of Bach transcriptions. So I really like his playing, and I really wanted to hear him in a big romantic work. This also features the Gewandhausorchester, conducted by Manfred Honeck, who often conducts the Pittsburgh Symphony in the United States. So I was kind of impressed by this, too, and really wanted to hear him as well. So I had to go right for this recording, even though I have over 10 recordings of the Brahms second piano concerto. I really love this work. There are so many pianists I love that I just have to hear them all play it. Anyway, this is on the Pentatone label, released on September 19th, 2025. Tracks 1 through 4, Piano Concerto No. 2, Opus 83. The first movement, Allegro non troppo. It's gigantic. Now, Honeck's tempo at the opening is a bit quick. Piemontesi gets some gentle feeling into the rising chords. This performance is going for line. It's on the quick side tempo-wise. Piemontesi's first solo has a big and bold sound with ample room sound around the piano. The recording is close and detail is picked up clearly. Let's hear the opening of this very famous work. And after that piano solo, boy, does Honeck take off when the orchestra is back in with the theme. The orchestral sound on the strings has great warmth, crisp articulation for the orchestra on the recording as well. Timpani come through powerfully when they're heard. This is a rhythmically articulate performance as well. Piemontesi gives his lines some bounce in the 5th minute and through the next few minutes. Right at about the 10th minute, the piece introduces another episode, and I've never heard such clear articulation at this point. Give this a listen. We hear the opening theme subtly return at the 12-minute mark, and at 14 minutes and 30 seconds, Piemontesi is traveling pretty fast in his solo part. I like the dancing quality Piemontesi gave the lines with the trills in the 15th minute, and he's always within earshot when he accompanies the orchestra's theme before the figures rising to the final chord appear. Now I want to mention that hearing the work at this speed, slightly on the fast side, does kind of bring the melodies, the whole melodic pattern, into high relief. You really hear shapes a lot more when they're just being handed to you this way by the conductor and by the pianist as well. usually you'll be more in the moment if the work is being played at a slower tempo. Anyway, that said, we're moving on to the second movement, Allegro Appassionato. The tempo keeps up its quickness with the opening statement of this movement. Again, the phrasing fits together well at this tempo, but I feel like there's emotion lost, especially in the gorgeous, quiet theme that follows. Again, rhythm is sharply articulated, giving a strong sense of momentum. Piemontesi varies his touch and phrasing for the repeat of the opening material, heard in the second minute, which I was very impressed by the way. And notice the steady fall of the bass notes, emphasizing rhythm. There's a sense of vertigo communicated at this fast tempo. Piemontesi plays the quiet material in the fifth minute with exquisitely light touch, and my favorite part of the movement comes across well, not quite as romantic as I'd like, but it does register. I remember when we did this piece last time, I actually also sampled this part because I just like it so much. So let's hear it. It's a really poetic moment. I'm always kind of curious to see how much poetry it'll come up with in the performance. So let's hear this. Yeah, I'll take that. I think that was good, but I've heard better. Anyway, Honeck emphasizes the fortissimos with some histrionic sound, but it never gets out of control. The return of the opening theme at 6 minutes and 50 seconds is boldly stated with a lot of room sound on the strings. Piemontesi makes a lot of putting his phrases into rhythmic groups, as he does in his solo leading to the orchestra's re-entry. The orchestra really picks up the tempo, moving to the final cadence. Track 3, Andante, the slow movement. Okay, this theme is well shaped by the cellist, but this tempo really is fast, to the point where a lot of the lingering emotion of the piece just doesn't register for me. It's a musically sound performance, though. There's not as much romantic weight as I'd like here. Let's hear it, so you can kind of decide for yourself. I do love the sound on the strings when they're in at around the 1 minute mark. I also like the gentle quality taken by the piano solo starting at 2 minutes and 53 seconds. Again, Piemontesi is very interested in putting the rhythm across. The movement actually slows to a romantic tempo at 6 minutes and 30 seconds, maintaining its sense of line as it does so. It wanders tonally, finding its way back to the opening cello solo at 8 minutes and 4 seconds, once again on the fast side. For the end of the theme, which leads to the end of the movement, the piano accompanies the setting of the theme on the cello at 9 minutes and 52 seconds, one of the most touching movements in the score. The ending is calm and close to the familiar slow tempo this movement is usually taken at. Track 4, the fourth and final movement, Allegro Grazioso. Piemontesi's attention to rhythm and beat in his solo lines pays off here, as this theme works well, with more depth when we hear the rhythm so clearly defined. Even for the flowing strings, after the 1 minute mark, the piano accompanies with almost percussive figures. The theme, a rondo, is back in the 3rd minute, and then the piano is off on an adventurous section. At 4 minutes and 54 seconds, Piemontesi slows the tempo for his brief solo section, then brings back the rondo theme at around 5 minutes and 15 seconds. The second theme with the flowing strings and percussively rhythmic piano returns just before the 6 minute mark. I really love the last statement at 7 minutes and 27 seconds when the theme is presented in triplet rhythm. Piemontesi plays it with considerable brightness. By the end, the tempo is really moving, practically skipping along as it ends on 3 big chords. Tracks 5 to 7 are 3 Intermezzi opus 117 for solo piano. The first one is marked Andante Moderato. Let's hear a little bit of it first. So here, Piemontesi is alone, and he brings his gentle attack to these works. There's a tendency these days to minimize rubato in Romantic-era works, and Piemontesi does that as well. The rhythm here is pretty straightforward, with no slowing for expressive purposes. The shaping of the melody is pretty, and Piemontesi achieves a lightly startling change of overall sound and texture for the middle section. He admirably keeps all the voices audible and lines intact. There's no lingering over the material, and for me, that's too bad. The piece is written to be lingered over. Still, the clarity of the performance is admirable. Track 6, Intermezzo number 2, Andante non troppo e con molto espressione. This piece has knotty melodic lines in both hands that intertwine, and the clarity of Piemontesi's playing and his consistency of tempo make them easy to pick out in this performance. He does apply a slight bit of rubato to the end of phrases here. The middle section has an appealing ripple in the rolled chords. It's funny, this piece comes across as more expressive than the first in this set in this performance. Track 7, the third intermezzo, Andante con molto. I've always liked the creeping bass line at the beginning of this work and the way it gives way to the descending theme that follows. Piemontesi states the repeat of that melody strongly. in contrast to the subtler first statement. The interpretation is much like that of the first intermezzo, played with little rubato in a fairly strict rhythm. Just for the cadence ending the A section, there's a slight slowing down. The middle section has a nice, gently nudging flow to it, with an appealing bloom to the sound as it opens out into the higher end. Again, throughout the piece, all registers sound with clarity, and that's remarkable. And that's the end of the album. This is overall an impressive set of performances and an excellent recording of the works. I think the speed at which Honeck conducts the piano concerto takes some of its weight away, though the sound of the orchestra and the pianist come across with plenty of punch. All of the melodic material is beautifully shaped, and some rhythmic impetus is given to the piano line. The work's construction and musical merits come to the fore in this performance, but at the expense of the emotion. The work really did seem over before you realize what you've heard. Piemontesi plays with clarity of articulation throughout, and I rather enjoyed that, though it's not always what you want in a romantic aesthetic. You want some lines to remain slightly undefined and mysterious. That was the whole romantic sort of style. Piemontesi brings this quality to the three intermezzos as well, the clarity of line. The clarity of the performance is astonishing, and score readers will love how every element is audible, though I miss the rubato that makes romantic era pieces like these come across more expressively. I wish pianists would bring that quality back, that rubato slowing quality. I enjoyed the performance enough, it sounds fantastic, but I love these works because of the way they generally make me feel. And rather than making me feel those emotions and responses, these performances reminded me of what I felt like when I heard this work by other pianists. So there's a slight difference there. I really love the recordings by Emile Gilles, which is a really famous one from long ago. Also by Stephen Huff on the Hyperion label, and Nelson Freire. Those are my favorite performances of this work. This one is commendable, though. I like it, but I feel like it just lacks in some emotional punch.
I enjoyed this a lot. I thought Piemontesi's performance is thoroughly musical and expressive, and I thought he gives just the right weight to the big Brahms waves of sound. Sometimes I think they're overdone, but especially in softer passages, his phrasing is flowing and smooth. As you mentioned, the focus seems to be on the movement of the line, and I enjoyed that quality of it. In this work, the orchestra shares the spotlight a lot, and the performance and balance on the recording is excellent. Honeck conducts things into a naturally cohesive flow of soloist and ensemble, and I liked the work's overall presentation a lot. And the intermezzi were a nice dessert after the big course, and I liked the creaminess of number 3 the best.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very smooth. I really enjoyed the sonics on the recording, so much so that I listened once on my headphones, and then again the same day I listened on my speakers at a great volume, so I could experience the nice balance and weight of the orchestra on the recording. Really nice sonics, and the piano sounds lovely.
Yeah, for those reasons, I might actually wind up picking this up.
Yeah.
Just add another Brahms second piano concerto to my massive collection of this one work. All right, on to the contemporary composer for this week. It is Finnish composer Kalevi Aho, born in 1949. This is his concerto for alto, flute, and strings. And when I saw alto flute, I was I thought, yes, we will be hearing that. And also his Moonlight concerto, which is for viola, percussion, and orchestra. So intriguing combinations here. I really wanted to hear this record. 2 different sets of soloists and orchestras play on each work, so I'll tell you who they are when we get to them. This is on the BIS label, and it was released on September 12th, 2025. The first concerto for alto, flute, and strings. Great. I mean, it's a low flute. We love that. It's a 6-movement work, and it was composed in 2021. Sharon Bezali is the flautist, and she's really one of the world's greats at the moment. And the Saint-Michel strings, conducted by Erki Lasonpalo, are the orchestra. The first movement is marked Misterioso, and that is the operating word here. It sounds like there might be some quarter tones in the alto flute's theme. The timbre of the instrument itself has a heaviness to it, and though Aho doesn't say anything about Japanese influences here, the solo instrument recalls the shakuhachi and its tone, probably because it's so heavy-sounding and deep. Let's hear a little bit of this. That alto flute can get up there, too, if it needs to. The movement has a drifting quality and is calm and is immediately appealing. The strings take over in the third minute with some drifting chords. There's a crescendo and a dramatic moment around the 5-minute mark. Then the music starts again. An outburst right at the end leads to the next movement. Track 2, the second movement, Allegro molto. Sawing dramatic strings begin the movement, with the flute doing an aggressive circling warble in between. The flute then plays a soft melody that builds up to a more aggressive pattern. I should mention, sound on the strings is vivid, and Bezali plays with very wide tone, very appealing. This is one of the great attractions of her as a soloist. The movement quietens to connect to the next movement. Track 3 is the third movement. It's an interludio marked Capriccioso, and the flute starts the movement with fluttering patterns and high to low squawks. It's an expressive interlude, but very short, so I'll leave you to sample it. There's a move upward to get to the next movement, which is track 4, Allegro. The soloist plays the bass flute here. The opening is compelling, with all of the violins playing crystal-sounding harmonics or sul ponticello, like we're in an ice castle. The flute comes in for its solo part, and that crystal orchestration makes a few appearances. At 2 minutes and 45 seconds, Bezali shoots air through the instrument, sort of like you would do in a shakuhachi, getting a variation on the shakuhachi playing technique. The sound is similar to a shakuhachi. Some lyrical, upward-reaching strings appear at the end, leading to the next movement. Track 5, Furioso. The Furioso section starts with bowing, aggressive repeated notes, with an aggressive pizzicato included. The flute interacts, and the music gets more histrionic as it goes, but in an exciting and not unappealing way. The movement sounds dramatic. There's a lot of upward movement at the end of this movement, and this one is no different, with the flute reaching upward, leading to a pattern in the cello and a repeated chord that leads to the epilogue. Track 6 is the epilogue. The flute is lyrical here over a sort of heavenly string chord that's reminiscent of Eino Juhani Rautavaara, one of Aho's teachers, as it turns out. The strings have a heavy flow to them and beautiful tone coming up magnificently on the recording. I really love those modal sort of gauzy string tone harmonies at the end of that sample. The flute gets an atmospheric solo at the 3-minute mark, with the orchestra gently coming in between phrases. The piece suddenly and unexpectedly ends on a quiet pizzicato. I enjoyed this piece a lot, I have to say. Tracks 7 through 12 are the Moonlight Concerto, a double concerto for viola, percussion, and orchestra composed in 2020. This features Hiyori Togawa on the viola, Alexei Gerasimez percussion, Lati Symphony Orchestra conducted by Anya Bielmeier. Togawa's first name is probably a variant of Hiyori. They spelled it with an L. Still, it's a name that's kind of rare to me. I've never actually met a Hiyori here in Japan. The percussion used in the work is not usually heard in orchestral concerts. It features the moon gong, which is an old Chinese instrument with a sound similar to the tam-tam, a waterphone, a hang drum, which is a hand-played, tonally tuned instrument forged from metal like a developed version of the steel drum. Also, 9 large Thai gongs of different pitches, a large military drum, and a vibraphone played with a bow. The 7th track is the first movement, marked Largamente. Aho says he listened to a lot of old Japanese music before composing the piece and was particularly inspired by ritualistic gagak music. You can hear echoes of gagak in this opening. The accordion takes the place of the sho here, which is that kind of dissonant-sounding chord instrument that they blow into. The opening gong sounds are cool right away. The whole atmosphere is of the Far East. There are a lot of atmospheric sustaining percussion among the struck percussion. Let's sample this 30 seconds in so we can hear the viola come in along with the percussive atmosphere. So this is really all atmosphere at the opening. Even the viola has a sort of Chinese sound to it in the way its notes bend. The viola line seems to do a lot of dipping from high to low. There's a double-stopped passage at 3 minutes and 10 seconds, then some spacey harmonics just afterwards. All of the percussion is live-sounding and three-dimensional. A long, sustained tone brings the piece into the 4th minute. Then there's a cacophonous outburst from the orchestra. Deep bass sounds from the percussion register with real presence. Track 8 is the second movement, cadenza. The viola has a cadenza here. There's an occasional percussion ripple. Let's hear a little bit of this. The viola plays some gorgeous-sounding harmonics at the end and brings them into the next movement. Track 9 is the third movement, con molto. This is the most virtuosic movement. Here the viola starts with a steadily moving line, sometimes going for harmonics. As the orchestra plays melodic material, the viola plays its constantly moving line. The viola's line changes, but it remains busy throughout the movement. There's an orchestral climax at 2 minutes and 58 seconds. As it plays fortissimo, the percussionist starts banging on what sounds like a kind of snare drum, hammering on it hard. The viola re-emerges with an attractive melody accompanied by harp-like percussion and sustained orchestral strings at 4 minutes and 45 seconds. The attack is hard to discern. The piece does a gradual decrescendo, and the ending is enchanting. Track 10 is the fourth movement, largo. The largo starts with mysterious, scratchy timbres heard from far off, and the show sound created by the accordion is back. The viola is in with a rising line, and again we hear some interesting orchestration as the winds play in their highest piercing range. Percussive gongs detonate in the back as the viola plays mid-tempo figures and the orchestra adds color. There's a crescendo at 3 minutes and 45 seconds, with gongs in the back and the snare drum snapping noisily again. Great sound on the percussion. They're really very three-dimensional sounding on the recording. And I should mention, this is a BIS Super Audio CD, so you can imagine what this would sound like in surround. It would be a very three-dimensional sound. Some of these low percussion instruments are amazingly powerful and take up a lot of sonic space. The music does a diminuendo, and we're left with metal percussion played quietly, and the violin soaring quietly and distantly into the stratosphere. Track 11 is the fifth movement, canto. The violist vocalizes as well as sings in this movement. The viola is playing sustained double-stopped chords as the vocals, which come across appealingly from Togawa, are sung as ahs. Let's listen. The movement is simultaneously calming and jarring. It sounds sort of earthy in its calmness. The orchestra comes in and smooths things out a bit, mostly winds, a timbre that lightens the feeling. And finally, track 12, the sixth movement, Epilogo e Coda. This movement starts without a pause and maintains the same mood as the previous canto. Winds take the lead as the percussion creates atmosphere. The viola is in with a more emphatic theme. After a fortissimo, the orchestra drops out at 2 minutes and 10 seconds, and the viola and percussion have more space, with solo orchestral instruments interjecting at times, mostly the clarinet. Some eerie sounds are heard after the 3-minute mark as the viola soliloquizes. It gets a lot of space, this cadenza, if you can call it that. It doesn't show off virtuosity, but rather morosely drags out double-stopped chord melodies. It does a natural fade at the end, with the percussion having the last gentle chiming and droning word. These two concertos contrast dramatically with each other. Sharon brings beautiful tone to the Alto Flute Concerto and maintains it throughout this relatively calm work. It's an appealing piece, but her tone makes it more so. There's some compelling orchestration in the work too, particularly the icy strings in the fourth movement, Allegro. The Moonlight Concerto is compelling right from the exotic sounds heard at the beginning, all beautifully caught by the recording engineers, and those would be Christian Starke for the Moonlight Concerto and Fabian Frank for the equally impressive sounding Alto Flute Concerto. The Moonlight Concerto is a piece whose overall sound entices. In form, it came across as episodic, but it was really the moment-to-moment timbres that had me interested. It's the more adventurous piece of the two, going for some histrionics at times and bringing some drama. This is an excellent program to hear in order to get acquainted with contemporary Finnish composition. It's not quite as inviting as last week's Kevin Putt's works, but it's got more than enough appeal to make the challenges worthwhile and even edifying.
For me, the appeal of both of these works were the interesting timbres, as we often find in Finnish music. And just the concept was intriguing. Instead of violin, we've got viola. Instead of regular flute, we've got alto flute. So we always like those lower range instruments. So we get the warm alto flute, the viola, and what interesting combinations of sounds Aho invents with the orchestration, especially the percussion in the second work. These are the kind of works that make you feel more that you're on a journey of scenes, of different soundscapes, rather than going along in traditional form and development. You don't really know where you're going to end up next, but it's always a new kind of environment. So if you like sound and interesting combinations of sounds, I think these works can reward a lot. I think this is the kind of thing you have to give time to, and you kind of close your eyes and see what interesting timbres and soundscapes appear before your eyes. And in that sense, that's how I enjoyed this and works like this. Works that explore different combinations of sounds and tonal possibilities of instruments. And I particularly found the waterphone tones to be interesting. I had to look up that instrument and see what other tones it was capable of making. So it's an interesting concept. And since we're here in Asia, this sort of melding of Asian sounds together into something that sounds definitely not Western was kind of intriguing in concept as well. Okay, over on the jazz side, I've got an interesting combination of recordings in the program. We're going to start out in Poland tonight, Mike.
All right, great.
Which is going to give me some pronunciation difficulty, so I'll do my best.
Yes, it is.
We're going to start out with a recording called the Karolak Songbook. And this is on Dux and V Records. It came out on September 25th. This is a recording that features compositions written or co-written by Wojciech Karolak, who was born in Warsaw, Poland in 1939, and he passed away in 2021. Karolak was a pianist and Hammond B3 organist who referred to himself as, quote, an American jazz and rhythm and blues musician born by mistake in Middle Europe. He started out as a saxophonist. In 1965, Karolak left Poland for Sweden, where he lived until 1972. He began to play the Hammond organ in 1967, and after hearing Chick Corea, he took up the Fender Rhodes electric piano in 1970. He played rock and blues in order to make enough money to buy an apartment and a Hammond B3, which he eventually did do in 1973. He performed around Europe, including with bassist Red Mitchell. He composed and arranged film scores as well. In Poland, he co-led the group Mainstream, and he worked as a composer-arranger for the Polish Radio Studio Jazz Orchestra. In the 1990s, with saxophonist Piotr Baron, who we'll hear here on this recording, and Zbigniew Lewandowski, Karolak started the Hybrid Jazz Trio as well. On this recording, we've got Piotr Baron on tenor sax, who we heard way back in episode 44, All Around the World, in January 2022 on Mnóstwo Jazz. That was on Polski Radio Records, and I remember we enjoyed that one. When I saw his name, it rang a bell. On drums, we've got Andrzej Dąbrowski. On piano, Bogusław Kaczmar, and on the bass, Derek Oshkowitz. Apparently, there is an album booklet for this recording, but the Dux Records homepage doesn't have a lot of information. I'm sure the booklet is in Polish anyway. On YouTube, however, there is some information kindly posted from V Records, and I translated this quotation from Piotr Baron about this music. He says, "It was supposed to be an album by Wojciech, Andrzej, Derek, and me, standards from memory without rehearsal. Wojciech agreed only because I managed to get Andrzej to play the drums. Then Wojciech passed away. We were left like orphans, and that's when I asked Andrzej and Derek if perhaps we could record this album, but compose solely of Wojciech's songs out of longing, out of disagreement with his absence, out of a need in our hearts. The three of us decided it was necessary, and since so, we had to find not a replacement because that was impossible, but someone who would play closest to Wojciech's style, and that's where Bogusław Kaczmar was chosen." So this is a tribute to their musical friend who passed away before they could do what they originally intended to do. Now, trying to find what recordings these tunes originally, if ever, appeared on quickly became a frustrating task, so I'll leave that to someone else who has access to some of these original Polish and other European recordings. Let's just enjoy the music. And we're going to start out the recording with a tune called Selector Junior. And things get started with 8 measures of drums here. The bluesy minor melody is appealing, 32 measures of similar halves, and Baron handles it smoothly. Kaczmar is out of the break with the piano solo. Let's hear this recording get started. Yeah, nice swinging and melodic ideas. And he has some fun tremolos that come along. Let's come back for a little bit of Baron's sax solo on this one as well. starts swinging, and I like his centered tone. Oshkovitz gets a bass solo too, and they do some trading eights with Dombrowski before getting back to the melody. Track 2 is called 8 plus 4. That equals 12, and what we get here is a neat blues with a bridge. The blues progression has a twist in the final 4 measures, 2 rounds of that, and a playful 8-measure bridge before a final time through. Let's check it out. There's the last time through the blues progression, and Kaczmar is up first for a piano solo, so let's keep on listening to get some of his playing in. Nice bluesy playing. Baron follows, also with an effortless bluesiness, and Oshkovitz's bass solo is melodic and high-reaching. Baron adds a fun final cry after another time through the melody. Track 3 is Gem. It's a pretty ballad. Kaczmar starts it out solo on piano before Baron is in on a 16-measure melody, continuing on into improvisations. At this tempo, we'll only get so far, but let's take a listen. Kaczmar both have gentle solos on this. Let's check out Oshkovitz's deep-toned bass solo here. Baron is back for another time through the melody and some final improvisations that turn bluesy. Track 4 is Blues Blues. It seems that Karolak liked the blues with a bridge idea a lot because we've got another one here. This time Kaczmar takes the 8-bar bridge before a final round of the blues and then is up for the first solo. On this one, let's hear Baron play some blues. In that little rising lick that Cannonball Adderley used to use a lot, and it sounds good on tenor too. Oshkovitz has a bass solo here as well, and they do some trading with Dombrowski before getting back to the melody. Track 5 is Barada o Spełnionych Snach, which I believe means fulfilled dreams. There's a short 2-measure intro, and then Baron is in with a very slow minor ballad melody. There's some nice chord changes that lift the mood. It's either 16 or 18 measures since it returns to the alternating chord idea from the intro, which goes around again and Baron just continues on improvising. Let's hear the tune get started. Kaczmar has a delicately touched solo, and Oshkovitz gets a bass solo too. Sensitive playing all around. I'll leave you to check out the solos on this one for yourself. Track 6 is Bile Iach, which I think means anyhow. This tune has a carefree, ambling quality. It reminds me a lot of Burt Bacharach. The first part of the melody, I hear Herb Alpert's "This Guy's in Love with You."
Yeah.
And at the end of the melody, It's Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. If you know the last line, because I'm free, nothing's worrying me. Both of those popped into my head as I was listening to this. Anyway, the melody's 36 measures. I'll give you a long sample to see what you think. Has a buoyant, carefree solo, and Kaczmar keeps it light and flowing too. Let's hear some of his piano solo on this one. Olszkiewicz has a go too, before Bauern is back with the melody to finish it up. Track 7 is called Go Right. This one is a waltz. After an 8-measure intro, it turns into a minor blues stretched to 24-bar form instead of 12. It definitely has more of a waltz feel than a 6/8 feel, so it's kind of a neat presentation. Once more, and then Bauern keeps on improvising. Let's hear some of his playing on this tune. Kaczmar has a bluesy and percussive piano solo, and Olszkiewicz gets a bass solo too. Almost every tune on this recording has a bass solo. Track 8, Pehove Steinstersch, which means unlucky, lucky, I think. This is an appealing, lightly swinging melody. After an 18-measure rhythm section intro, the sax melody is in a basic AABA form in 16-measure sections, although the end of each A section is noticeably different. It takes a couple minutes to play out, so we'll just be able to hear it get started. After the melody, Baron continues on with a solo and the swing drive intensifies. Kaczmar follows on piano with fleet lines and bouncy chords, and Baron is back for another round of the melody and some final improvisations on an extended ending. And the recording ends up with Ballada o Czasie Nieotraconym, the Ballad of Not Lost Time. Again, another ballad. After an 8-measure intro, Baron takes the melody. It sounds like 20 measures, and after a pause, he's back with improvisations. Let's hear the start of it. After Baron's solo, Kaczmar has a gently flowing piano solo, and Olszkiewicz has a bass solo too, so let's hear one more from him for our final sample. Really warm and melodic playing, and Baron is back with a final melody and a dreamy ending to the tune and the recording. As a composer, Wojciech Karolak wrote appealing tunes that most jazz fans outside of Poland and Europe probably haven't heard. The program here, selected by his musical friends, has a lot of variety. Ballads, blueses with bridges, and appealing melodies with varied constructions. Piotr Baron on tenor sax is in the lead here with an attractive tone for all the melodies and well-constructed solos throughout. Bogusław Kaczmar on piano presents the harmonies of Kerouac's tunes in an appealing way, and his piano solos sparkle, and Derek Oshkovitz has a warm bass tone and melodic bass solos featured throughout the recording. Andrzej Dąbrowski rounds things out with musical drumming that matches the mood of each tune. In this age of streaming, where limited distribution of recordings doesn't prevent us from hearing jazz recorded around the world like it used to, it's worth your while to check out recordings from different places and learn about players who developed their love for American jazz and created their own domestic legacy. So this recording was a nice discovery.
This is old school jazz that swings at the beginning and sighs at the end. The album felt very traditional to me, and I enjoyed the playing. Piotr Baron's sax tone was full, deep, and moody in an appealing way throughout, and he especially shows that tone off in track 3, Gem, and 5, whatever that's called, Ballada o Spinonich Snach. And sadly, I can't recommend that amazing track to friends because I can't say it. Yeah, you should hear this track. Anyway, I'll just say track 5. I really like the construction of Bileyak, I guess, track 6, with its mischievous key changes at a slow tempo, surely keeping soloists on their toes. That, combined with its sunny mood at a slower mid-tempo, made it a highlight for me. Track 8, another unpronounceable title, also had a sunny mood. It's funny how the sunnier tunes all have Polish names. They're making it work for that positivity on this album. But for the most part, the last part of the album feels blue, especially the moody final track. Whatever. Bala o Zasi Nitrokonim or something. It's a satisfying listen with loads of great tone, including from Darek Oleszkiewicz on bass. I just wish the album's tracks had names I could tell other people about.
Yeah, this was a pronunciation challenge, but it was easy to listen to the music, so.
Yeah, these guys are jazz musicians. They'll have a sense of humor, I hope so. Here you go.
All right, the next recording is one I was looking forward to, and it brings me back to a lot of good memories hearing these names, Randy Brecker and Dave Kikoski, together. When I was in high school, I had a chance to go to the Downbeat Music Fest USA, their first competition for young jazz musicians around the country. I had the honor of being on the stage with Christian McBride, Roy Hargrove, and Joey DeFrancesco when we were all just students, and I didn't realize those guys would all become famous until years later, and I looked at the magazine that we all had our names in. Downbeat had set up all kinds of great clinics and learning opportunities with famous jazz musicians, and I got to meet Randy Brecker and have a nice chat with him while I was there. The next year I would go off to university. If you remember, Mike, when you go to university, did you stay in a dormitory?
I did.
You almost have to
4 years.
as a first-year student if you're not a commuting student. Well, you don't get to pick your roommate, right? So you arrive at university and you're put in a room with someone you've never met before. And my roommate and I got along, but we had absolutely nothing in common. Especially we didn't like the same kind of music, which didn't work out. So the next semester, you could choose your own roommate. And I had met a friend who was a jazz drummer, and we hit it off, and we could at least enjoy the same music together. So I had with me 2 recent recordings of Randy Brecker, both of which some of the tunes we're going to hear on this album come from. And when we were listening to one of them, he said, "Who's that on piano?" And I said, "Oh, that's Dave Kikoski." He said, "Dave Kikoski? Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah, Dave Kikoski." Well, it turns out my roommate had played drums in a band that used to play weddings and things in the 80s. And he played with Dave Kikoski. Said he was a really interesting guy. So whenever I hear these 2 guys together, then I think back of all those wonderful music times I had when I was young. Anyway, this recording is Weekend at Smalls on Cellar Music by David Kikoski. Came out September 26th. We've got Dave Kikoski on piano, Randy Brecker on trumpet, who was 78 years old at the time of this recording, Billy Hart on drums, who was 83 when this was recorded, and Joe Martin on bass, and he was on Kikoski's K-Mode. And his 3 releases as a leader featured Brad Meldau and Kevin Hayes on piano. So he's used to playing with a lot of great pianists in a trio here. On the recording, executive producer Spike Wilner and Corey Weeds. Produced by David Kokoski and Spike Wilner. Recorded at Smalls Jazz Club on September 9th, 2024. Engineered, mixed, and mastered by Colin Monux. This recording features originals by David Kokoski and Randy Brecker that they've previously recorded. We'll hear them in a new way here. We're going to start out with the Kokoski tune, Winnie's Garden. This goes back to his 1998 Inner Trust on Crisscross. Interestingly, on that album, it's spelled W-I-N-N-I-E, and here it's W-I-N-N-E-Y. So I'm not sure which is the correct spelling. Maybe it doesn't matter. Things get off to a fun start with this tune. Kokoski starts it out solo, and Hart fills in some spaces. Martin joins in before Randy Brecker's in for a round. I think there's a 32-measure tune in here somewhere as it gets going. It has a fun monkish quirkiness to the harmonies and rhythms. Let's hear this recording get started. And Brecker's off soloing first, and Kokoski's reactive backing to his playful lines is really great. He goes on and on with endless ideas. Let's come back in to hear some of Kokoski's solo when he's got things really worked up. And once more, through the melody with a cute ending wraps it up. Track 2, another Kokoski original, Shadow. This goes back to his 1994 self-titled release on Epic Records. This tune has cool modally chords with interesting voicings that Kokoski is really good with. There's a melodic phrase that sticks with you, and there are neat moving bass and left-hand piano lines. It sounds like there are 2-beat measures and spots, or the phrases start in unexpected places crossing bar lines. Let's hear this one get started. Let's come back in to hear some of Randy Brecker's solo on this one too. He's still got that great bright tone and range with agility. Joe Martin has a solo here too, with a fine melodic sense and a soft but sure attack, and Kokoski's solo on this one features colorful chord voicings and cascading lines. Track 3, a Randy Brecker tune, There's a Mingus Among Us. This is from his 1987 recording In the Idiom on Passport Jazz, or in Japan it was released on Denon. This was one of those albums that I took along with me to university in my first year. This is a neat tune that incorporates characteristics of both Charles Mingus and Thelonious Monk's composition style and harmony. It starts with a tricky intro of 5 measures. The last measure has 6 beats in it, and the melody's 32 measures of similar halves, and Brecker continues on into a solo. He's having a lot of fun. He gets into some kind of half-valve shakes on the way in this playful solo and makes some interesting choices of notes that Kokoski immediately responds to. Kokoski's solo is great on this one too, but let's check out Martin's bass solo here. Brecker and Kokoski do some trading fours with Hart next before a final time through the melody. Track 4 is Presage by Dave Kikoski. This is from his 1989 Presage recording on Freelance and also 2004's Details on Crisscross. It's time for a ballad, and this is a really nice one with both a lovely melody and rich harmonies. The difference in presentation from his earlier recordings makes it fresh and new. On the 1989 recording, Eddie Gomez's thick bass sound really made it smart. Here, Randy Brecker is going to get the 32-measure melody after a fine solo intro from Kikoski. Let's hear as much of it as we can in 1 minute. After the melody, Brecker continues on with a solo that balances sensitivity with excitement. I've always liked the little edge, almost like a burr, that he gets in his tone in spots. Let's hear some of Kikoski's magic with chords and lightly touched high register lines on this one. That's beautiful. Some moments there are really Bill Evans-like. Kikoski is such a complete player. He's incorporated Monk, Bill Evans, Chick Corea, and we often hear a lot of McCoy Tyner influence in his modal playing, but it always comes out in his own unique style. Brecker is back for another time through the melody after his solo to a lush ending. Speaking of Monk, track 5, Straight No Chaser, Monk's famous quirky 12-bar blues melody that he recorded in 1952. The rhythm section takes it around once, Hart with playful drumming and Brecker adding little trills before joining in for a round and then launching off on his solo. There's a lot of playful interaction during his solo on this one. You can tell that Kikoski is having fun in his solo too, with tons of ideas coming along, And Martin gets a bass solo on this one as well with bluesy nods and rhythmic variety. Let's check out the trading with heart after the bass solo later on in the tune. They're having lots of fun. That'll lead to a couple more times around the melody to wrap it up. Track 6 is Moontide, a Randy Brecker tune. This is from 1988's Live at Sweet Basil on Sonnet Records. This is the other one that I brought to university with me. A cool even beat tune with interesting modal harmonies and interesting shifts between minor and major moods. The melody is 40 measures long in total, interestingly with the second and last sections being the same. There's the final section there, and Martin is up first for a bass solo. Let's come back in for Brecker's solo. I'll pick the ending section so you can hear some of Hart's really cool drum fills. Kikoski's solo is introspective and sometimes delicate here before Brecker returns for a final time around the melody and an extended ending with some fun interaction between Brecker and Kikoski. It's the longest track at over 10.5 minutes. And the recording ends up with a final David Kikoski original Cecilia. This is from his 2002 recording Combinations on Crisscross. This is a really rhythmically tricky post-bop tune. There's a little tumbling lined intro phrase into the melody. That's in an AABA shape with a longer 10-measure B section with a cool rhythmic switch up in the drums and bass. After the final A section, there's a little tag line similar to the intro line to take it out to a little break before Brecker's solo. Nice interplay there with Kikoski. And I always like that Randy Brecker takes chances in his solos, getting into dangerous spots and finding a cool way out. They use that intro lick again as a transition between solos. Let's come back in to hear some more from Kikoski. There's some great spontaneous rhythmic interaction with heart in his solo. There's that little lick that'll transfer into Martin's bass solo. I really came to like his warm, consistent tone in all of his solos on this recording. And Billy Hart gets a solo on this one, so we've got to check that out for our final sample. And once more through the melody finishes up the tune and the recording. Interestingly, I didn't pick up any crowd sound on this recording. I have Kikoski's 2008 Trio Live at Smalls recording on CD. That had great playing, but the sound quality is kind of disappointing. Here, everything sounds very good, clear, warm, and balanced. There's no new material on this recording, one monk tune and a mix of previously recorded originals by Dave Kikoski and Randy Brecker. No worries, if you're familiar with these tunes, you'll enjoy how they've evolved over time and come off fresh with this lineup of musicians. Dave Kikoski is an exciting and versatile jazz pianist who is always a treat to listen to. His playing here is fabulous as usual, always interesting harmonies and exploratory lines in his solos. Randy Brecker shows no signs of slowing down, his always identifiable sound shines through, and his solos are adventurous and playful. Joe Martin makes a solid ensemble player with tight grooves, and his solos are melodic and warm-toned. And Billy Hart, now in his 80s, still has youthful exuberance as we heard in the last solo sample, but he always picks up on ideas in solos as well and propels the excitement throughout. It's an enjoyable recording for the fine musicianship and also the sense of playful enjoyment throughout the performances.
Yeah, this is an album with some exciting playing on it. Having David Kikoski and Randy Brecker together already makes it special, and they both deliver on these 7 tracks, as does the rhythm section. And like you, I said the exact same thing. Brecker sets himself some challenges in the solos, often starting oddly and building interesting patterns from there. He's pretty adventurous with the way he develops his solos harmonically, and I was really listening to a lot of harmonically interesting jazz this week, here and in the album we're going to talk about next. He plays with his solid tone and great musical chops that I've come to associate with him, and he can uncork really strong high notes. He's a real athlete on the trumpet and creative in his approach. He resorts to trills often on this album, and I'm wondering what he senses in them. It's pretty interesting. I kind of like that approach. He uses them in There's a Mingus Among Us, and the sequence pattern he starts with in track 1, Winnie's Garden, is also pretty cool. They both invite interest for their oddness and fascinate when you hear where he goes with them. On There's a Mingus Among Us, Kikoski starts in a similar vein and builds into some groovy phrases, and as we've also come to expect, Kikoski always takes an unexpected approach, from the very old school opening to Winnie's Garden to the beautifully voiced chords in his solo in Moontide on track 6. I could listen to him play all day. The ideas just keep coming. We've said this so many times on this podcast. His musical imagination is completely unfiltered. This is an album you need to hear if you like jazz. It's just really great. I'm going to have to pick this one up.
Would have been a great performance to be at as well.
Yeah, well, that would have been cool.
Someday I'm going to catch Dave Kikoski live. I've seen Randy Brecker a few times in my life, but...
Right.
All right, and let's keep the trumpet going with our next recording by trumpeter Charlie Porter, Cipher on PHP Records. This came out September 26th. Back in episode 218, A Quarter for Your Tones, we heard alto saxophonist Nick Biello's New America recording that was on La Reserve Records, and that featured Charlie Porter on trumpet and pianist George Colligan, who also play on this recording. Trumpeter and composer Charlie Porter is a Florida native. He was the first musician ever to be awarded first prize in the National Trumpet Competition in both jazz and classical music. He reached the semifinal round in the Thelonious Monk International Jazz Trumpet Competition. In 2005, as a composer, Porter was the recipient of Chamber Music America and the Doris Duke Foundation's New Works Commissioning Grant. A Fulbright Scholar and graduate of Juilliard and Manhattan School of Music, he is currently an adjunct professor of trumpet at New York University. He's performed and recorded with Joe Zavino, Paquito de Rivera, Joyce DiDonato, and Simone Dinnerstein. Porter is a founding member of the Grammy-nominated Absolute Ensemble, and his collaboration on DiDonato's crossover album Songplay got him a Grammy Award in 2019. His previous albums as a leader are Charlie Porter, self-titled release in 2018, Immigration Nation in 2019, Hindsight in 2021, Live at the Blue Llama in 2024, and Portland Sketches live also from this year, 2025. On this recording, Charlie Porter on trumpet and all original compositions, Nick Biello on alto sax and soprano sax, George Colligan on piano, Alan Jones on drums, and Garrett Baxter on bass. Now, the title Cipher refers to the mystery you must solve by listening to this album, and you can win $10,000, Mike, if you solve it.
Well, I didn't solve it. I was pretty intrigued by all the harmony, though, on this record.
If you go to Charlie's website, you'll get some information. There are 9 clues embedded across the 8 tracks, and they're in the music via ciphers and codes. Each one brings you closer to completing the map. You must have a basic working knowledge of music notation, ciphers, and codes, but need not be an expert. Decoding the clues lead to a secret location somewhere in the continental United States where an object has been hidden. And the first person to find the object and present proof of their solving this puzzle claims a $10,000 reward.
Why is he doing this? This seems really extravagant for a jazz album.
The hunt began on September 26th. Now, you don't need to purchase anything to participate, though you may buy the CD, which doubles as a cipher disc decoder. You can check this out on his homepage, and you can also get the sheet music to aid you in the hunt. So looking at the CD case, the outside of the hole exposing the CD has the alphabet in a circular pattern, and the pattern on the CD inner circle that lines up and spins around has half-step note values from A to G with the enharmonic equivalents in a repeating sequence. So it takes 2 times through the sequence to go around the circle. So you may need that to help you solve the problem. You can check out more details about that on Charlie's homepage. But let's get into the music and see if any secret codes come out of this. It sort of gets us going on a little journey here because the opening track is called Departure. And the opening here is a long rubato section with reaching intervals and improv mixed from trumpet and sax. It creates a kind of fantasy atmosphere. Let's just get a little sample of the beginning. The main hard bopping melody is brought in by 4 measures of drums. It's in an AABA shape with slightly irregular lengthed sections. I think it's 10, then 9, then 16 before back to the first phrase. Adventurous harmonies and rhythmic change-ups too. Let's check out a little bit of that. Porter's off improvising from there. It's a dangerous landscape to solo over, but his weaving lines swing hard and explore without fear. Let's hear some more on this tune. Bielo follows. These two are a great match for each other, as we heard on Bielo's latest recording, both bursting with energy. Colligan gets a solo on this one too. His speedy right-hand figures get punctuated by neat two-handed chord ideas, and on the final melody section, they stick on the tension-building B section to build it up before the end. Track 2 is 13 Miles. Baxter gets this one going with a mysterious 11-beat bass pattern that keeps repeating. Piano adds harmonic tension with drum fills, and a legato flowing horn line seeps over the top. Things get into a loping 4/4 swing for the horn melody that continues in legato fashion for 16 measures before a final climactic section with big interval jumps. Let's hear this one get going. Bielo's up first for a solo on this tune, so let's check out some of his playing. Yeah, I like the backing and transition into Colligan's piano solo, and they do the same for Porter's solo. He's playful on this one with half-valve teasing and sassy phrases. The horns pick up on the opening bass riff, keeping it in 4/4 time here for Baxter to work around on some improvised lines before getting back to the melody for a final round. And I like how they split and stagger the descending lines in the final section. Track 3, En route. A rubato start here from Porter over rippling piano from Colligan and drum fills. He gets joined by Bielo on the lines with surprising interval jumps. The drums get the main melody section going, which starts with 16 measures of short piano phrase exchanges with the drums. The horns come in to repeat that together, and the bass gets walking, and they go into a final exciting section that leads to a solo from Colligan. I'll jump in where the horns come in so we can hear some of Colligan's improvising. He really connects his ideas right on through this one. Porter's solo is really exciting with bluesy hints over the minor progression and speedy stratospheric lines, and Bielo gets a fluid soprano sax solo. Everyone works through the melody sections to a harmonically tense ending, with Jones building up drum energy between the phrases and Porter ending way up high. Track 4 is Namesake. Baxter starts this out solo on bass with bringing harmonies into stop and start phrases with piano and drums. I'll join in from where the horns get involved with lines that weave through dissonances, creating an atmosphere of danger. Porter and Bielo have an improvised dialogue on this one, sometimes landing together. Let's check out some of their interaction. Probably not a good tune for date night, Mike.
I don't know. I really liked it.
Then again, maybe it's a good test of future musical taste compatibility.
Yeah, it's important.
Culligan's off with running lines into a new funky groove section for a bit of his solo, and then the horns are back, interweaving to the ending. Track 5 is But Not Forgotten. This gets going with horn lines that reach way up and jump around to a dissolving trill before working up again more gradually. Let's check it out. Off on a really cool solo here. I really dig the 6/8 groove and modal changes, so let's hear some more of his playing. Culligan follows, nice springy phrases in his piano solo here, and Bielo has swirling lines in his soprano solo on this one. Baxter has a subtle short bass solo before the horns are back with the melody that works into exchanged trumpet and sax improvised phrases and final calm lines together. Track 6 is Eden, and if there were a piano in the Garden of Eden, you'd expect a lovely opening like Culligan gives this, with lightly ringing chords and dreamy harmonies. Subtle drum fills and ringing bass add to the scenery. Notice that when the flowing unison horn lines come in, that it's in a 7/4 meter. horn lines work to a climax with Baxter ringing out some nice bass harmonics underneath. Bielo emerges with a soprano sax solo, so this will be one to check out his soprano playing on. Porter starts his solo out with intriguing intervals smoothly worked into his lines, and Baxter has a melodic and ringing bass solo on this one too. The horns are back to a dreamy ending. It's a very soothing tune. Track 7, Are You Sure? A hypnotic bass and piano line get it started on the 12-measure intro. Culligan splits off for some ringing decoration. The horn melody is completely unpredictable in a fun way, sometimes syncing with the bass and piano line and sometimes stopping up while that bottom moves in interesting ways. Crisp drums and cymbal work from Jones mark it out nicely. Sounds like 34 measures in total. Let's check it out. Is up first for a solo on this one, working in little staccato ideas and turns into an exciting solo with lots of double time excitement. Bielo is back on alto for this one with a matching intensity, and Culligan gets the last solo here. Let's hear some more of his playing on this tune. After the horns finish up the final melody section, they vamp out for Jones to work up the drum energy, and the horns are back for one final section. And the recording ends up with track 8, 2 in 1. Jones gets this one going on the drums and keeps the excitement high between the jagged and trilly horn melody phrases when they enter. Porter is out of the break with a solo over drums and bass. Bielo gets a cordless free-flying solo on this one too, with Jones and Baxter mixing things up on the way, and let's hear the fun trading with Jones that ends up this tune. Well, I don't think I'm any closer to $10,000 after several listening sessions with this recording, and I had a big enough challenge just deciphering Porter's tunes. I don't plan on being in the mainland U.S. anytime soon, so I'll leave that to you musical treasure hunters. That said, I did have a good time listening to this recording on both a cerebral and emotional level. Porter's compositions have challenging harmonies and melody lines with interesting intervals. The grooves vary, as do the structures and meters. There are some really cool modal harmonic landscapes, pretty moments like in Eden, and hard swinging and intensity to balance all of that out. Porter and Bielo are both adventurous improvisers, and the solos throughout are technically and musically impressive. I enjoyed Bielo's soprano sax work on this recording too. Colligan impresses with inventive solos throughout, and he shows different sides to his playing personality on each tune. Jones and Baxter make everything gel together, even on the many tricky rhythmic spots in these tunes, and they have their own moments in the spotlight. It's a great recording with lots of fresh ideas and contemporary jazz built on a solid post-bop foundation.
Yeah, what a wonderfully bizarre album this was. The harmonies and scales played throughout were captivating, the rhythm was all exciting. The soloist's personal harmonic fingerprints are all over the music. I love Charlie Porter's tone. He's forceful and solid, especially up top. Also, though Charlie Porter goes for some odd intervals in his themes and solos, I'm thinking of the high note right at the opening of En Route and his squeezed-out tone and rapid-fire rat-a-tatting repeated notes in the solo for that track. There was some creative soloing by George Colligan on piano. I especially like his busy approach over the slow rhythm in 13 Miles. Everyone else has sparkly moments on the album. George Colligan's busy, energetic piano solo in En Route is fantastic. Okay, let me just say, En Route was the standout track for me, but they're all really good, especially when it comes to harmony. Approaches on every track are creative and often engage interest early. Take the bass harmonics by Garrett Baxter on that open track 4, Namesake, for example. It's an intriguing way to begin a track. I also love the Eden Like You. I did think this album required a lot of attention from the listener, meaning from me. I had to really kind of think about what I was hearing. But it's worth it because the harmonic rewards are great. I think for us, I'm wondering if you're going to agree with me here, Russ. This album is up there with Tobias Wickland's Silver Needle and Kirk Knufke's Super Blonde as far as unusual approaches to albums go. But this one's more caffeinated than either of those.
Yeah, and this probably has more of a traditional post-bop kind of element for its bass.
Yeah. But it's just kind of a standout, and it's an odd sort of album in the way those two are, too. And I really like the individuality of it, I think.
Yeah, I really like his use of interesting intervals and unexpected directional turns and melody lines. But that's balanced out with these cool grooves and rhythmic elements.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to want this one on a CD, but it looks like I think you have to go to his website to get it. It doesn't seem to be anywhere else.
I believe so. It's a limited production, so.
Oh, boy.
Be nice to have, though.
I'll look into it.
All right, that's going to wrap things up for episode 230. Wow, we're really cranking them out there, Mike.
We really are.
But we've already got a lineup for episode 231. So what do you have on the classical menu for next time?
Well, I finally found an album that's really just kind of matches our whole like aesthetic as far as adult music goes. And that album would be Bach and Bourbon. It's kind of a throwback to our early days. This is by the old guitarist, and that's all we know about him. His name has been scrubbed from the internet. I can't find anything about him except that he's Irish. Okay. And this is on Big Round Records. It features Bach and Mozart and a lot of original compositions by the old guitarist himself and some other composers as well, but not always classical ones. Pretty interesting.
Sounds interesting.
Idea here. Looking forward to listening to that. Just looked like something a little different that I thought we'd enjoy. Also, we've got 2 American violin concertos by composers that I bet a lot of Americans don't know. Robert Russell Bennett and Vernon Duke. And those are played by Chloe Hanslip. And the Singapore Symphony Orchestra, right? That's where you want to go. If it's American, it's made in China, not in China, made in Singapore, I guess. Conducted by Andrew Litton, who's got a really good understanding of American music. And we're going to match our Orville Peart recording from a few weeks ago. Those were choral works. And we're going to hear a recording of his orchestral works. And this is Credo by the Estonian Festival Orchestra and Paavo Järvi. I had to get this one in too. So we're going to do that for the contemporary composer and have our second Orville Peart album of the year. Over on the jazz side, we're going to feature one of Antonio Martino's new recordings on his AMA Records label, continuing with his Serbian wave of jazz, saxophonist Rasko Obradovic and his Mandala recording that came out this past Friday. Then we're going to hear a Polish saxophonist Aleksander Kolosi along with Alex Sipiagin with a recording called Crossed Sounds. That's on Alto Jazz Records. I've got to try to get some more information about the compositions and things on there. There's not much online. And then we'll come back to the U.S. on Wide Hive Records. They don't put out a lot of releases, but they've all been really interesting. And we're going to hear drumming great Mike Clark's Itai Doshin. And he's got a real great lineup of players on there with some interesting tune selections as well. All of those are fresh recordings from just this past Friday. So it's going to be an interesting jazz lineup. You can find all of those in one place on our Deezer playlist, and I'll have that put up a few hours after this episode is published, and I'll put a link to it on our Facebook page as well. As always, we want to say thanks to Fast Signs of Staten Island for our glowing neon logo. Any final thoughts for this episode, Mike? Christmas is coming, Russ. It's just around the corner. Well, I hope the Christmas releases keep coming out, too. Otherwise, it'll be a sparse Christmas. I can actually already do an episode if I had to, but I want to see what else comes out first. I'm nowhere near that level yet, so. And I don't want to be at this point, so. Right, I understand. Anyway, lots of things to come before the end of the year. Our Christmas episode and our best of 2025. That's going to be a hard list to put together. Whittle things down. Yeah, there were a lot of good things this year. It's been a good year. I've already been thinking about it. I've heard, I'm kind of wondering if some are going to make the list now since we've heard so much good stuff. Well, it'll be good to go back and review all of that music. So looking forward to all of that. Right. Me too. We'll be back again next week with episode 231. So until then, keep listening and we'll see you again next time.